For tonight, they've massively helped me out. And I just want to say a big thanks to the Sanctuary who have ran around helping me get the room set up and everything, because it's quite a lot to just do on your own. I'm John Cook, do a little bit of Stone. Hopefully you've seen us on social media and on our website. This is our second Hustings that we've done. Did one in 2019, but there were no faces in the audience. It was all online, so I'm asking you to be good, best behaviour. Got security on the door, and they're told to remove you if you get out of hand. So the format for tonight is each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give you an introduction as to who they are, what the party is, and to try and convince you to vote for them. We've then got 8 predetermined questions which were submitted via our website. Each candidate has got 60 seconds to give a response to it, and we'll go through the candidates in a random order. We'll have a 15-minute break when I will look at any bits of paper where people have written down questions, and I'll try and pick out any questions that I don't feel we've already covered either in the first 8 or on the candidate profiles that the candidates have submitted. On that note, Gavin Williamson did send me his last night, and I've just been too busy today to get it online, but I'll sort that out for you tomorrow. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go around in random order. I've asked all of the candidates to stand up and address you just because it's quite a flat venue and people can't see you at the back. So our first person who's going to start off with our introduction is Sam.
Hello. Test. Whoa! Hi everyone. Thank you for coming and thank you for having me. It's great to see local democracy alive and well in Stone. My name is Sam Harper-Wallace. I'm a local councillor in Penkridge. I'm standing for the Liberal Democrats. I'm also recently a father to a daughter 1 month ago. She's the reason I got into politics, really. I knew I was going to have kids in the area, and so I made a promise that I would leave the world in a better place than I found it for her. Britain is broken. Our NHS is on the knees. Our economy is stagnating after a crash, and nothing works in Britain, to be honest. We have scandal after scandal. Trust in politics is gone, and I want to change that. All I'm asking for you tonight is to trust me that I will make that promise to my daughter, and in turn I'll make that promise to you tonight, that I promise to work hard for you and the constituencies. One thing with Liberal Democrats is, if you know somebody who lives in a Liberal Democrat controlled constituency, we have to work really hard, and that's because we don't get the generational vote that Labour and Conservative have, so we have to really want it, and I really do want it. This election is about the NHS. We have to say about NHS. Waiting lists are at a record high. This not only affects patient outcomes, but it also affects our economy. People can't get back to work quick enough, so our economy takes a hit. And we're so reliant on legal migration for our NHS workforce that we don't train our homegrown talent anymore. So I'm asking you tonight to listen to some of our Liberal Democrat policies. We've got some really sensible ones and really important ones that I believe in, and asking you to potentially vote for me. Thank you.
Thanks. The next person to speak is Gavin Williamson. I'll just say that when they've got 10 seconds to go, I might shout at them. They've got 10 seconds to go, so if I'm shouting at them, they've not done anything wrong apart from running out of time. Cheers.
Thank you ever so much, John. My name's Gavin Williamson. I'm the Conservative Party candidate for the Stone, Great Wyrley and Penkridge constituency. I've been incredibly fortunate and privileged to have represented South Staffordshire for the last 14 years. The South Staffordshire element makes up half of the new constituency. And in all that time that I've been a Member of Parliament, the one thing that I have always ensured that I've done has ensured that my roots have been within my constituency work, that my focus has been here. My wife is a teaching assistant here in this constituency. It's where my 2 daughters go to school in this constituency. It's where I care about, and when I am in Westminster, it is where I am representing. I am not representing Westminster here. I will be representing Stone, Great Wyrley and Penkridge in Westminster, fighting the battle to make sure that we get what we need for this constituency. Over those 14 years, that is the approach that I have had for my constituents. I've had that privilege and know how important it is, whether it is a small issue or a major issue, that you are there to listen, to hear, and to do your best by them. That is the approach I will bring if I'm fortunate enough to be your Member of Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Alexander.
Good evening. Thank you to you all for being here, and thank you to Sir Bill Cash for 40 years of extraordinary public service. I'm standing for the Social Democratic Party, Alexander Bramham, and we are a socially conservative but economically left-leaning party. Now, we know Britain's broken and falling apart. The NHS appointment lists are extraordinarily long, and just today, 700 boats arrived from the Channel, and Rishi's made those promises, but he hasn't fulfilled them. The waiting lists are still long, the boats are still coming. Now, our party's fundamental values are family, community, and nation. So, for family, we support full tax savings sharings between a married couple raising children. So, we don't want to force people into a traditional nuclear family, but where you have one parent, usually the father, that's bringing them the money, and stay-at-home mother, they've got the generous tax relief as if that salary was split half between them. So, we want to protect parents under the Equality Act, for same protections from discrimination as we currently offer the 9 recognised protected characteristics. On community, I'm so proud to have grown up here in Stone. I love our town. For me, my roots in that community, in the church I worship at, and a wonderful congregation there. I believe that we can and do in Stone support each other as a community, but that's sadly lost in a lot of the economic cutthroat rat race policies. So we want to ban buy-to-let mortgages. I think we're discussing. Look forward to talking about that later. I've run out of time, but thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Jacqueline.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Brown, the candidate for Stone, Great Wyrley and Penkridge, a brand new constituency. I feel like Stone is my centre. I'm a former chair of Stone Labour Party. I live in a village a few miles out of Stone where I'm very involved in village life. Great things about Stone. I moved here in '99 to take up a deputy headship in Mere, and Stone was the place for a quality night out, and we had many nice staff do's here. The great things about Stone are the local walkways and the canal, the Stone Wharf and the new theatre that the Stone Town Council have really worked hard to achieve for us. Stone's a great place for sport and leisure, with plenty of cricket going on, and the Canoe Club, where we're proud to have an Olympic medalist. In May 22, I was elected as a borough councillor, and I'm standing in this election because this election is about change, and it's about restoring hope and trust in politics. As a former head teacher, I want Britain to be a place where whoever you are and wherever you start from, you'll have a fair chance to do well. Locally, people are concerned about the NHS, water quality and our high street, plus crime. They're also worried about overdevelopment without investment in proper infrastructure. Labour has robust and ambitious plans to tackle these issues through our Labour missions, our 6 first steps and our party manifesto. I'm excited by the opportunity to rebuild and renew Britain. For me, being elected as your MP would be the culmination of a lifetime of public service.
Thank you. And then finally, Danny.
I might need some technical help with this. First of all, as several of my, I'm going to say new friends up here have said, thank you all for being here tonight. This is a very important election because we need change, and it's wonderful to see people that want to hear what we have to say and want to question us, because that is important. I first voted for the Green Party in 2019, and the reason I voted Green is because my teenage sons, who are now 13 and 16, I was starting to get worried about the kind of world that I was going to be bringing them up into. And it's going to sound a cliche, but the Green Party really does stand for a different way of doing politics. We believe in respect. We believe in listening to people. We want to work with people. And we have policies that are designed to transform the country by addressing the climate emergency and by caring for people, the most vulnerable in society that need our help. We want to help them. People want to feel that they are in control of what happens in their constituency, not politicians in Westminster. My teenage sons are growing up in Staffordshire. Staffordshire is where I live, and Staffordshire is where I love. Stone is a beautiful place. Driving in here this evening with the sun shining and just looking at the lovely facilities you have here, I just want this place to bloom, and in 50 years' time, when my grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren, are wandering around, I want them to be able to have the best in life.
Thanks to all the candidates for that. At the end, they'll do closing statements and they'll go in reverse order from the opening statements there. Okay, so question number 1 that was sent in is around the topic of drugs. So Stone, along with many towns, has seen an increase in drug usage. How will you and your party keep our children safe, offer support to those addicted to drugs, and successfully prosecute those in the supply chain? We're starting with Sam on that one.
Thank you. The Liberal Democrats, we have... I'll start with a story. In Penkridge, we used to have a community police officer who used to come round, and everyone knew who they were. Many residents tell me and talk with fondness about... they actually know him by name, and he was called Andy. That's the sort of thing we've lost in Britain, and that's something we need to bring back. So the Liberal Democrats, we are firm believers of community policing. We want to put people on the front line. And the great thing about Andy and the work that he did is he knew all the kids in the village, and he spoke to them, and he was aware of what they were doing. He was aware of maybe the bad circles that they were getting into. And he was able to work with other multi-agencies and do a multi-agency approach and give them the support that they needed. So Liberal Democrats were really hot on that. Another thing as well is we want to legalise cannabis. We will funnel the money into mental health and drug protection for the harder drugs in life. So, thank you.
Same question to Alexander.
We oppose the decriminalisation and legalisation of cannabis, but I strongly support common sense policing. That the single priority of police should be the fighting of crime. They should instill fear in the hearts of criminals. My first lover lost his life from a drug overdose, and it breaks my heart. And I see so many people's lives I knew in Manchester ruined by addiction. They're so often trying to escape the horrendous life circumstances they find themselves in. That's incredibly isolating. I believe the Social Democratic Party's generous housing policy to build 100,000 new social homes and the community support, community care projects we've lined up in our manifesto can create a society where people can be more connected and more supported and less isolated, and reduce the need for people to turn to that escape.
On to Danny.
Young people often turn to drugs because of lack of opportunity, lack of hope. We want to go back to the source. We want to invest in young people. Youth centres, reopen them. Give young people the opportunity to get skills that they can use in life so they've got hope for the future. They've got something to work for. Families that are stuck in poverty, we want to raise the minimum wage to £15 an hour, and we want to invest in training so that families are taken out of poverty, so they have opportunity, they have hope. We also want to do other things to help those in poverty, such as more rights for renters and insulating homes so they're warmer, so people are healthier. But we do believe in tackling the source of issues, and that means investing in young people.
And Jacqueline?
Thank you. Well, I've always believed that prevention is better than cure. And as a head teacher, I saw the devastating effects of substance abuse, particularly on young children, which could result in them being taken into care. Family breakdown is a result of substance misuse. And I think I'm going to have to disagree with the Liberal Democrat candidate tonight, because I don't think there's any such thing as soft drugs and hard drugs. Even prescription drugs can be addictive, and there is quite a lot of research to say that cannabis can contribute to long-term mental health issues, and also can make people disengage from life and work opportunities. So I think I disagree on that point. What I would say is that Labour want to crack down on antisocial behaviour with more neighbourhood police. So that would be looking out for the drug dealers and the people that are promoting substance misuse, and invest in new network of youth hubs, because we do have to, as the Green candidates say, invest in youth services. And Labour's always tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime.
Sorry. Thank you. And then finally for Gavin.
So, growing up, my mum and dad were foster carers, and actually you saw as they did what they did in supporting, children who were often in the most difficult situations, the real impact that drugs have on so many people. And there isn't a simple solution. There isn't a solution where you legalise one type of drug and everything is okay. It's not just about having more police officers. It's not just having more treatment. It's not just about targeting specific hotspot areas. It's about doing it all and bringing it together. Because actually by doing this, we have the best possible opportunity in order to be able to steer young people's lives in the right direction. Yes, I will traipse off a few policy areas that obviously, more police officers, 8,000 more hotspot policing to be rolled out across the country.
Sorry, I put the time on that one. Apologies
Thank you.
if you didn't hear the end, but yes. Okay, thanks for all the answers on that first question. On to question 2. This is about the high streets. So Stone has a strong independent high street, but there are a number of empty units. What can your party do to stimulate the high street and bring new businesses into the town? On that one, we'll start with Jacqueline.
We've seen changes with the way high streets have used. The move to online retail has meant that footfall's really dropped in high streets. The other issue is people don't want to go because of antisocial behaviour. My neighbours certainly say that about going into Hanley or Newcastle nowadays. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to support small businesses as much as possible. They're facing increasing costs like fuel bills. We need to, and Labour has a plan to make sure that if they have late payments, that there will be action taken, because many small businesses are very affected by that. I know it's something as a freelance worker that I've been affected by as well. And finally, Labour would set up new banking hubs where different banks come together, because we think that people being able to access their money and speak to a human being would be a great thing, plus integrated transport to get into the high streets as well.
Thank you. Now on to Danny.
The economy certainly needs help, and we want to stimulate the economy. One of the ways we were to try and help the high street is we need to invest in public transport. We need better public transport links. If people can easily and safely get public transport to their local high street, they can make a day of it without having to take their car out, find expensive parking. They can have a stress-free day there. And we want to support small businesses. We want to help them with... I'm so sorry, my mind just went blank for a moment. One of the things we do want to do to help with their costs, we do have a plan for insulation for all homes. Now, that is for residential homes, but it is also for small businesses to help bring their bills down. That's just one of the many plans we have to help businesses.
Thanks for that. Gavin?
So one of the first things I'll be doing in the summer, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, is opening a constituency office here in Stone. So I'm there and able and accessible for the people of Stone to see me and raise issues. But more importantly, we need to have free parking here in Stone. Actually, it's important that most people will be accessing their towns by car. We need to have good, accessible, free parking right across the town. I've already had meetings with Link, who run banking hubs. This is progressing incredibly well in Stone, and it's vital that we have that. Access to cash is important. But going out there, speaking to small retailers, speaking to major retailers, I will be out there banging the drum for Stone, making sure people understand this is a great town to invest in.
Thank you. And on to Sam.
Thank you. I probably need to check my car because I'm pretty sure I didn't pay for parking. Anyway, we want to abolish business rates, so that will help small businesses. We also want to expand the British Bank, which gives investments to small and medium-sized businesses. One thing for Penkridge, and I'm sure it's the same for Stone, is a lot of the units down the high street aren't fit for purpose, and they need to change in order to... You get a lot of hairdressers that move in because that's the only business that can be supported in the size. So I would work really hard with the local authorities to make sure in their local plans they're putting away funding for unit renovations so that those units can be more viable in the local economy. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally on that one, Alexander.
So look around you, innit? You've got politicians on the dance floor. I'm not going to try and copy Ed Bull, so we know much better on the dance floor. But I make a serious point here. High streets thrive when there's experiences, when they're bringing people together and forming those connections. And they're offering something more than the kind of sterile warehouse experience that businesses like Toys R Us failed for. Now, our SDP policy is a 1% tax on eBay, Amazon, internet purchases. That's to help the high street out a bit, to encourage people to come to their local shops. And that will be channeled back into reducing the business rates to just those small steps to help people that are trying to run a flourishing business not be as burdened, and to stop the giant monolith companies from trampling them down. Thank you.
My turn to stand up again. Upside down. Okay, question number 3. Stone has recently seen a planning application submitted to build an EV charging hub and drive-through restaurant on Greenbelt land. How important is protecting Greenbelt land to you and your party? And on that one we started with Danny.
Greenbelt land is there for a reason. Now, obviously, I'm all in favour of EV charging hubs, but Greenbelt land not only gives us countryside, but it keeps our communities as individual communities. If you build on Greenbelt land, then 2 smaller villages become merged into one and you lose the character of it. We need the right amenities, but they need to be in the right places.
Thanks, Danny. Jacqueline, same question.
In my area where I'm a borough councillor, we've got an issue where the former Kiel Golf Course, which is rewilded, is threatened with a huge housing estate. That's the Tory local plan is proposing that, and it would merge Kiel and Silverdale to make a kind of suburb of Newcastle. And exactly as the Green candidate said, we lose the characteristics of the villages, and I'm against that. This drive-through restaurant, I mean, the idea of it and service station that they'll have EV there, I mean, it's a red herring. And I was interested to read on Albos, a local resident has suggested an alternative site for the EV chargers that could be on the ABB Brownfield site. So I know the local community are interested in this, and we do not want to lose our green spaces. They're the lungs of our towns and cities.
Thank you. On to Alexander.
I've signed that petition that was referred to about the planned EV works. I mean, that's at Darlaston Inn, so thank the resident for raising that. Regarding, so I lost my trail of Greenbelt land. Yeah, so our policy is a heavy taxation on no planning permissions be granted by private housing building on Greenbelt land, but we're very ambitious in building 100,000 new social housing in a moratorium on right to buy, and clamping down on. Sorry, I'm losing my thought here, but I'll wrap up. But there's cases where we should build on Greenbelt land when they're not areas of national beauty, to give people a roof over their head, but not recklessly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Gavin?
Thank you, John. For 14 years, I fought to protect our countryside from developers, from people who are wanting to expand the cities and towns into our countryside. I've been to see this site. It's literally a few hundred metres from where another service station and another EV charging point is. It's totally unsuitable. And we've got to ask ourselves a wider question. There is the constant creep of ribbon development all along the A34. There isn't any plan by Stafford Borough Council to draw the line. There is no wedge of Greenbelt in order to be able to protect Stone. I will stand alongside residents in Stone in fighting inappropriate development and fighting the government, whether it is Conservative or Labour, to make sure that our voices are heard against inappropriate development and stop it being foisted on us.
And then finally to Sam.
As a district councillor, I'm constantly battling our Conservative-led council to stop releasing Greenbelt land, which we need to be protecting. So, yeah, absolutely in favour of not releasing Greenbelt for any sort of development. The fact that it's got EV charging there, again, it kind of what's the point of having EV charging vehicles there and then building on the Greenbelt? It's kind of like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, in terms of housing, because I know a lot of the candidates started talking about housing, housing has to be in the right places with the right infrastructure, and often with the infrastructure first. So the Liberal Democrats believe in that kind of policy and that policy line. So yeah, very used to fighting Greenbelt applications in my district, and I'll carry on doing the same as an MP. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, question number 4. In your opinion, what key government reforms need to be introduced to clean up politics and rebuild trust in politicians and the government? And on that one, we're starting with Gary.
So what I firmly believe is that actually in this country we have a lot to be proud of, because actually we have a system that is transparent and is open to challenge. But there is always more that we can do. There is always more that we should strive to do. And whether this is in the areas of making sure that government departments are more transparent, whether it's the decision-making of ministers, but also the ability of Parliament to hold government to account is so critical. I've seen it from the inside as being a former chief whip, about actually sometimes how there isn't as much scrutiny as there should be, and how you reform the committee process so legislation gets better and greater scrutiny would make sure that we have better legislation and better laws passed.
The same question about government reforms to Danny.
There are a lot of what are considered safe seats in the UK, where there is a large majority for one party and has been for years, maybe even decades. There is more leeway for less transparency. Proportional representation would take away safe seats and mean there is more of a need to actually work for your constituents, to be there for them and to be transparent to them. In addition, in my opinion, more transparency is needed in government about any level of bias when awarding contracts.
Thank you for that. Jacqueline?
Thank you. The polling expert Sir John Curtis has recently said that public trust in politicians is the lowest ever. Only 9% of people believe that politicians tell the truth. Now, as a head teacher and teacher, I had to apply by the Nolan system, the Nolan principles as a public servant. These are so important, and we've seen them time and time again being broken. I'm a strong believer that if you're the MP, you should not have a second job. As MP, you have more than enough to do, and you're very well paid for doing so. So that's something that I agree with the Green candidate saying that there is often a conflict of interest when people take on consultancy work and extra work beyond that of an MP. And I really do believe that if you're looking for government reforms to make things better and get people to trust politicians, start with that.
Thank you. And on to Alexander.
So I support proportional representation and would not take a second job alongside being a Member of Parliament. I'm very concerned. A particular occurrence I would stop is what's happened in this constituency, that I'm shocked that there is no Reform Party candidate on the ballot, that your opportunity to vote for the party that you might choose to support has been robbed from you from a malicious trick. It's disgusting. I reported it to the police and discussed this with a single point of contact. I had 2 officers at my house, and rather not investigating that as a criminal matter, that needs absolute parliamentary reform. If a candidate withdraws at the last minute, the party should be allowed to field a replacement so that you can go to the ballot to choose. You don't have to vote for me or anybody else, but that's for your choice to make, not me or anyone here.
Thank you. And then finally on that one, over to Sam.
To be honest, I think we all lost trust in our politicians when we saw our Prime Minister and our Chancellor dancing in Downing Street. So that's great. Danny stole my talking points around proportional representation. You know, there are too many safe seats. We've got to flip the system and make these MPs that are in these safe seats work hard and harder. And also, Jacqueline, again, at second jobs, it's hard enough to do my council job. With my job at the moment, I can't imagine what it would be like with as an MP. So, yeah, echo both of your thoughts there. Thank you.
Thanks for those. Okay, question number 5. What are your thoughts on the statement, you can't increase spending on public services without increasing taxation? I'm going to start with Jacqueline on that one.
You will hear lots of things during this election about how the Labour Party are going to increase tax. I've even seen a poster, Keir Starmer wants your wallet, wants your purse. Well, here is the Labour manifesto, completely costed. We are looking to close tax loopholes, including the fact that private schools do not pay VAT. But everything that we have put out for you to look at has been fully funded and costed. Lots of myths going around about tax. I've had pensioners saying to me, you're going to start taxing pension. Well, I receive a teacher's pension and it is taxed. Everybody is taxed on any income over £12,750. But because tax rules are so complicated, people sometimes can't see the wood for the trees. So what I would say is, you can trust the Labour Party to invest in public services, but we do not have a magic money tree, and we will not give you the moon on a stick.
Thank you for that. Okay, Danny, I'll just repeat the question again from the question is, you can't increase spending on public services without increasing taxation. Your thoughts on that?
I would agree with Jackie. We can't give people the moon on a stick. We can't. You do have to increase taxes. And any politician that says we are not going to increase any tax is possibly not being entirely truthful. I don't like calling people liars, so I'm just going to say possibly not being entirely truthful. Our tax increases would be a carbon tax on fossil fuel imports and domestic extraction that has a dual purpose of both raising the revenue needed to invest in the NHS and everything else we want to invest in, and reducing carbon emissions. We're also proposing a wealth tax. Now, this is on those with assets in the tens of millions and in the billions. It's not on the struggling middle households. It's on those with the very, very top wealth. We are being open about our tax increases. It's in our manifesto.
Thank you. And Alexander, you can't increase spending on public services without increasing taxation.
That's true. You can, however, reduce demand on public services, reduce the demand for public spending. Well, a huge source of that demand, huge pressure on our NHS and our housing has been immigration. We would take the UK out of the ECHR, the 1951 Refugee Convention, to secure our borders. And I support workfare over welfare, so creating safe job opportunities for newly released prisoners who otherwise are stuck in a dependency of welfare benefit dependency, and generous support for apprenticeship schemes to help young people secure a house and get a job and start a family. Thank you.
Okay, and then on to Sam. You can't increase spending on public services without increasing taxation.
I don't really agree with that. You can do potentially what reform we're going to do and cut other public services by 5% to spend on other in other areas. But in general, yes, you do have to raise tax. I think what the Liberal Democrats believe in is raising the tax on the right things. So we're the first people to bring in the windfall oil and gas tax because they took record profits during the energy crisis. We also believe in taxing big banks, and we also believe taxing in the big tech businesses so that they can fund a mental health professional in every single school. So yeah, I think it's also us. Well, I don't know if it's a Labour policy, but...
Mental health practitioners.
Oh, okay, different name. So, can I have that time back? Yeah, of course I can. Yes, I can. Yeah? I love it, honestly.
And then finally, same question to Gavin. You can't increase spending on public services without increasing taxation.
So usually when a politician says that they don't have any plans to increase a tax, it usually means that they are going to increase that tax. And that is something that we've often seen. And when you have those questions levied, whether it's changes to council tax, whether it's changes to people's pension pots, you always get the same answer back from the Labour front bench, is that they do not have those plans. Now, the reality is you have to run things tight fiscally if you are not wanting to be in a situation of increasing taxes. But there are areas that we can continue to look at where there are tax loopholes and other such areas. But if you are going to commit to large spending areas, you have to be realistic to the fact that there will be expectations of extra tax. That's not what we are planning to do.
Thank you for that. Okay. Question number 6. Workers often feel the need to go on strike to fight for fair pay and conditions in the workplace. This massively impacts the lives of the public who want to use things like trains, medical services and airports. Do you support workers' rights to strike? That question starts with Danny.
Please forgive the wording, but that is quite an evil question. Do I support people's right to strike? The Green Party cares about two things, about people and about the planet. And if people are not earning a fair wage for what they are doing, then yes, they do have to take recourse against that. What I will say is obviously all the strikes in the NHS, we're planning to invest 20 billion in the NHS. It's the most of any party. Warwick University has looked at our plans and said, yes, your costings are feasible. So we are looking to improve the wages in the NHS to stop those strikes because, yes, people do need a fair wage for a fair day's work.
Thank you. Same question to Jacqueline.
I don't think anyone takes a decision lightly to go on strike. It's a very difficult decision, and you will be worse off financially. And sometimes you've got to think about how am I going to feed my children if I go on strike. There has been a hostile environment for workers, in my opinion, in the last 14 years, and that's why we've got the Labour New Deal. The Labour New Deal is going to outlaw fire and rehire. It's going to look very carefully at 0 hours contracts. These are all things that have weakened workers' rights. And with the cost of living, with just if you look at rent alone, the massive increases that we've had in rents, so that they are eating into 50%, even 75% of people's wages. Work should pay. Work should pay. And in my experience, strike is a last resort, but we do have the right to withdraw our labour.
question to Sam.
Thank you. I might not agree with strikes, but I absolutely agree with their right to be held. If it's done in a democratic way, it has to be done in a democratic way. I think I share your views. It is a hostile environment for workers under the Conservative government. We've got the highest tax burden for workers for 80 years. That was my point that I forgot. What the Liberal Democrats we want to do is we want to create a dependent contractor status which gives automatic rights such as sick pay and holiday pay for workers, so it avoids businesses kind of skirting those obligations by hiring contractors instead. We want to raise the minimum wage for people on zero-hour contracts by 20%. We also want to raise carers' minimum wage as well, which is a really important thing because that's a bloody hard job, and to get paid minimum wage for it is ridiculous.
Thanks, Sam. Alexander?
There's 3 types of strike. It's not the case for every worker in the UK has a current right to strike. There's sectors such as the police where it's not possible for them under law to strike, but their wages have largely remained stagnant. So I think prevention rather than cure is an important factor here. Organisations like that, police, should be far higher compensated for the important brave work that they're doing. And I think the junior doctors are reasonable to go on strike as they're scheduled to in the next couple of weeks. I think they deserve more generous compensation for the critical work they're doing. But there are also unreasonable strikes, and we mustn't forget that the Labour Party's candidate selection, leader selection, is heavily biased by the unions, unelected, not democratic. Remember what happened with David Miliband, Ed Miliband, where the Lynchers lead what we might see under Keir Starmer.
Thank you. And then finally, Gavin?
Thank you, John. I'll always defend workers' democratic right to strike. It's very important. But I do think it's also important to make sure that we have minimum service guarantees in certain key areas, because actually the wider impact in terms of communities, in terms of families, and the wider economy, and we look at areas such as transport and other areas, it's absolutely key and vital that those parts of the economy are able to work even at a lower level than usual. But yes, absolutely always defend people's right to democratically withdraw their labour.
Thank you all for your answers on that particular one. Okay, question 7. It's a long one. Hold on.
10 seconds.
Don't put me under pressure. Given that one of the candidates is a former head teacher and one a former education secretary, why is education not a priority in the manifestos for Stone? We don't need the Labour pledge to recruit 6,500 teachers. We need the funding given to be realistic, to enable schools to work towards a balanced budget, retain staff through realistic pay scales, and provide the best resources for our children. What will you do to support local schools which in the current climate may not be able to operate due to the forecasted deficits within the next 2 years? Oh, we'll start with Gavin on that one, sorry.
Thank you, John. So I went in for a number of battles to make sure that we got extra funding for schools, and we saw some of the largest funding increases over those years. But it's one of those areas that we need to constantly work on to get more. The thing I will do, if I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to be elected as the Member of Parliament for Stone, Great Wyrley and Penkridge, I'll work with local schools to make sure that if they need support, whether it's in applications for capital funding or other schemes, that I'm there to help them, support them and make those arguments. I've done this as a Member of Parliament, fought for my schools, whether it's condition improvement funding, extra grants, extra asks from government to deliver a meaningful impact to pupils in my constituency. That is the approach I'll have in Stone as well.
Thank you. And the same question to Jacqueline.
Thank you, Chair. I feel like Bridget Phillipson would be very upset to hear that our plans are not ambitious for schools. We have had 14 years of a Conservative government and academisation has really taken over. Now, if you look at some of the multi-academy trusts, there's been quite a few scandals about the heads getting enormous salaries, and also we've got teaching agencies that cream off massive amounts of the money that is intended for children. What I say is this: I started teaching in 1988. My children, after 10 years of Conservative government, were sitting on threadbare carpets. I went into my classroom, there was one book for the children. I then saw the most massive expansion of education under Tony Blair and the New Labour government. I saw the spreadsheets, I saw the Sure Start. And when all austerity came in, I lost my job because the nursery schools were closed. So I say that Labour will always put education first.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Alexander?
We've not been fast enough to respond to the new challenges that technology have created for children and the huge damage that's been done to young lives across the country. The SDP proposed a smartphone ban on all under 16s. They're just distraction. They're introducing children to pornography and deranged woke ideas, some of which are being introduced by the teachers. Children are being taught that they have a gender identity, that they might have been born in the wrong body and should enter toilets in the schools of the opposite sex. That's something that should never happen. The children shouldn't be prescribed puberty blockers. But we also recognise the problems of obesity and wider problems of health and lack of exercise. So we support a compulsory 1 mile a day of walking exercise for everyone, but children and teachers across schools. Thank you.
Okay, and the same question to Sam.
Thank you. We've had 10 education ministers since the Conservatives have been in control, and 5 since Gavin. So the Conservatives just don't take education seriously, in my opinion. Thankfully, the Liberal Democrats do. We want to increase early years pupil premium threefold to £1,000 per student. I think my mom's a teacher, and I think if anyone ever speaks to a teacher, I don't think they have much good to say, especially over the last 14 years. They'll tell you about horror stories about how they're overworked, underpaid. Oftentimes, my mum would buy a lot of the facilities needed to just teach kids. We need to solve this crisis, and kids have been left behind after COVID, and a lot of their mental health is suffering as well. So again, as I mentioned before, we want to put a mental health practitioner in every school, funded by tax on big tech. And finally, we want to end the special needs education postcode lottery that exists in this country by giving local authorities more funding to solve that crisis.
And then finally on to Danny.
My 16-year-old son has just finished his GCSE exams. Luckily, he is doing brilliantly at school and he's predicted high grades, but it's because he himself has gone out of his way to ask the teachers for help. In 1 year, he had 3 separate physics teachers. The teachers are leaving the schools to go to professions other than teaching. One of them I know went to be a financial advisor. We are pledging to invest £8 billion in education. This includes £2 billion to go to pay rises for teachers. They need a fair pay because the work they do is invaluable. Children need that education. We would also abolish Ofsted. Teachers are teaching to vote at the moment. They are teaching so that their Ofsted scores will be where they want them to be. We want them to teach what children actually need to learn.
Thank you very much. And then the final question before we have a quick break is, what measures will your party take to protect individuals from persecution based on their identity, including factors such as religion, skin colour, age, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation and lifestyle choices? And we start with Sam.
So I'm going to mention the coalition years here. And I know that won't do me many favours. But one thing it will do is we dragged the Conservative Party to bring marriage equality for same-sex marriages, and I'm really proud of the coalition for doing that. Liberal Democrats have always stood for equality. It's literally in our values. We're liberal, we're progressive. As long as you're not hurting someone, we don't care really what you do, as long as it's not harming someone. So, yeah, Liberal Democrats have a very strong, long record of protecting human rights. Won't leave the Human Rights Court either as well. Apologies for that, Alexander. Thank you.
Thank you, and the same question to Gavin.
So I think what we've seen is many measures over the last 14 years to make sure that people's rights are protected. Sam was claiming it all for the Liberal Democrats, but I can sort of vaguely remember that it was a Conservative Prime Minister and the chap that works for Facebook as Deputy Prime Minister at the time that sort of did it. But this is really important. There's actually, we create a society and we create communities where people, whatever their gender or their faith or their beliefs, can live in freedom and security. And that is about good law and order and respect for all, whatever their faith and whatever their belief. And that's something that's very important to me.
Same question to Danny.
As I answered to a previous question, the Green Party cares about two things. The Green Party cares about people and about the planet. We believe in respecting others. We believe that it doesn't matter your race, your religion, your gender. We want to respect you and we want to help you. And on a very personal level, I can assure you I did have a shower this evening before I came out, but my Pride rainbow, because we've been celebrating Pride Day at work, hasn't quite come off the inside of my arm yet, and I am proud to display it.
Thanks. Jacqueline?
Thank you, Chair. The Labour Party is the party of equality. If you look at our history, we brought in the Race Relations Act, we brought in the Sex Discrimination Act, and more recently we have worked very hard to ensure that that kind of weaponisation that goes on, where people are singled out because they're from a different country or they've got a different way of life, we've made sure that we're there to support people. We're all equal, but one thing I would say, social class is still the biggest barrier to opportunity. If a child's born into poverty, then their chances of fulfilling their potential are seriously limited. So along with gender equality and the rights of women, I would say let's look at social inequality, because that is the last taboo that we've got to break down to ensure that everyone gets a fair chance in life.
And then finally, Alexander.
Councils and providers of public services should not be spending public money on woke ideology. These initiatives divide people, they label them, put them into boxes and pit them against each other. I don't believe that crimes should be uplifted by motivation of a protected characteristic. If somebody's assaulted or burgled, that same crime should incur the same penalty. And inflating those penalties is social engineering. And I strongly oppose the proposed ban on conversion practices that's being pushed. That is the free choice of individuals like myself who support the teachings of Christian church or people of Muslim faith. But yes, people should be able to live their lives without being persecuted for their identities or beliefs.
Thank you for that. That's the midpoint. We're going to take a quick 15-minute break. If you've pre-ordered drinks, there should be over at the back over there. Toilets are free now. So thank you so far for the first half. To pick questions which we haven't already covered, either, as I said, in the first half, candidate profiles, and some of the things were mentioned in some of the other hustings that you may have seen the candidates take part in. There was a good one on Monday at Brood, so if you haven't seen theirs, head over to their Facebook page and watch that back. Anyway, question number 9 will be delivered by Jonathan Howell. Got that right? And then I have the order for people to answer. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. A lot of people, British people, seem to care about resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict. How would the candidates work towards getting a rapid ceasefire, a longer term, the formal recognition of a Palestine state allied to a position of non-aggression by the Israeli state against unarmed civilians?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that one. And we start with Alexander on that one, please.
I was horrified and heartbroken by the images that were circulating at the start of October, tragedy of the rapes of the children killed. And I'm horrified to see, particularly at the start of that, support for the terrorist organisation Hamas and the calls to eradicate Israel, for rampant anti-Semitism, the calls for Israel not to exist as a state from the river to the sea. But I'm also concerned for the lives of the innocent people caught up in that conflict. And so I don't think Britain, there isn't anything, we don't have sovereignty over either of those countries. We can't enforce our beliefs onto them. But I don't think we should be supplying arms to either side and being part of that conflict.
Thank you for that, Alexander. Same question to Jacqueline.
Well, thanks for the question. This is a long-standing and deeply entrenched conflict, a very complicated one. We, as a nation, supported Israel's right to defend itself, but that defence has to be proportionate. And I would advocate the ceasefire, and I would advocate working towards a two-party solution, two-state solution. Now, you could say that's a very, very difficult task, but if you think back to the Troubles in Northern Ireland and what we achieved when we signed the Good Friday Agreement, communities in conflict can be brought together. And I do agree that we should not be fanning the flames either way, and we should definitely not be providing arms or aid that increases the suffering of people. So two-state solution would be my way forward.
On to Sam.
Thank you. I'm really proud of the Liberal Democrat record on the Palestine question. We were the first major party to call for a bilateral ceasefire. We didn't use it like a political football, like the SNP did, trying to catch Labour out. We also would definitely ban the arms. Now, we don't sell many arms to Israel. It's mainly parts that go into other larger arms. What it does is it sends a message to our European friends that we want to stand on a strong record that we don't support violence. So hopefully they would then follow suit. Liberal Democrats do support a two-state solution, and I obviously support that as well. It's the only way forward. And then finally, there's going to be no military option to remove Hamas. You know, you kill one Hamas person, and then 5 more people, their children, will come back. So there is no military solution, and it has to be done peacefully through democratic solutions and diplomacy.
Thanks for that, Sam. Gavin?
I think we all look at what is happening in Israel and Palestine and are just so incredibly shocked, and everyone just so desperately wants to find a solution. Britain's ability to deliver that solution is limited, but we have to be firm advocates of that two-state solution. You cannot have a military resolution to this conflict. There has to be a political resolution, and that involves both sides sitting down to find something that underpins the security of both the Israeli, the state of Israel, but also the Palestinian state, so that the Palestinians have their own state going forward.
Thank you. And finally on that question from Jonathan, over to Danny.
The situation is heartbreaking. I don't think anyone would argue with that, and the Green Party would call for an immediate ceasefire. That is what we would support. Do I have a magic solution, a magic wand that could solve the problem? No, I don't. And I must admit, as a human being, I can see, to a certain extent, both sides of the argument, because there usually are two sides, and I will reiterate, to a certain extent. But the Green Party believes in peace. We stand for peace. What I would say is no country at all should be using the situation as a political football, and we should not be arming them. We need a peaceful solution. People deserve to live in peace.
Thank you for that question and thank you for the answers. Our next person to read a question is John Dibworth. He's right at the back. If he's not moved, so he's right at the back.
Thank you for all being here tonight. My question is, what is your plan to reform the NHS without wasting extra billions of taxpayers' money?
Okay, so that question starts with Gavin, please.
I saw firsthand last year the amazing service that the NHS does. Just in Stoke, my youngest daughter had to have her whole spine reconstructed, and the level of service was just took your breath away. And we must never run down the amazing things that happen, but we have a key problem in terms of access to primary care. That's immediate first step. We need to have more diagnostic centres. We also need to look at how we take some more of that primary care and put that into pharmacies, where we can sometimes deliver that more efficiently, but more available to communities right across the country. But here in Stone, we also need to be looking how we expand that primary care. We say got the same number of surgeries in Stone today than we were sort of 20 years ago, when it was a much smaller place. So we need to be dealing and addressing all those areas.
Okay, and the same question to Sam.
What a great question. I mentioned at the start that this is the election to save the NHS. You're absolutely right. We're spending so much money on our NHS. Health inflation is through the roof. We don't have a lot of money to go around because of Brexit and the crashed economy. But what we need to be doing is, instead of spending it at the bottom of the funnel, where it's really expensive, people in hospital, it's spending it at the top of the funnel. So in things like prevention and more GP access, because we need to just stop the people getting sick, because when they get sicker whilst they're on an extremely long waiting list, we end up spending more money on them. So the Liberal Democrats want to really laser focus the top of that funnel to make sure people are not getting sick, and we're preventing it. So we want to put 8,000 new GPs in there. We also want to reform social care. So we want to keep people out of hospitals, so free personal care, so that they're not in hospital just getting basic needs met. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Alexander?
Across 5 years of developing appointment booking systems for the NHS as an IT consultant, I saw the passion of the frontline workers working at the coalface, supporting those in need, but I also saw the disgusting corporate greed siphoning off those profits in the gradual privatisation of the NHS. But we oppose the sheer level upon level, like an onion, of middle managers and bureaucracy that's involved in the NHS desperately needs reform. The staff at the front line, like the junior doctors, I mentioned the answer earlier, they deserve that recompensation. But we need to get rid of just all the middle managers and spend that money more sensibly. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. And then the same question to Jacqueline.
Thank you, Chair. I've mentioned prevention is better than cure earlier in the answers, and a lot of those initiatives that we had in the noughties to encourage people to take enjoyable exercise and to eat healthier diets, a lot of those have closed down. A lot of those services that used to support people with that aren't there anymore. I would also say there is some wastage in the NHS. I would focus on the bank staff, bank nurses and supply agencies, rather like in education. A lot of the money goes into private hands by employing people on those kind of contracts. We've got ambitious plans for the NHS, and I could list them here on this card, but I'll tell you one thing, we're not going to be able to fund them by cutting tax, especially national insurance.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And then Danny?
I agree with Sam. That's a brilliant question because all parties want to invest in the NHS. We want to put 20 billion in, but you have to spend the money wisely. And as the others have agreed, prevention is better than cure. We want to invest in GPs. We want to get early diagnoses because it's easier. Let's face it, it's cheaper to deal with the situation earlier rather than later. But as well as investing in the NHS, we want to improve people's quality of life so that their overall health improves. We want to work at the root cause. We want to increase the minimum wage so that those on the lowest wages can afford to eat healthy food. We want to give all primary school children free school meals so that they go home with a lovely full tummy, having done their full day at school, learned and gone home healthy and fed. And we want to insulate houses to keep people warmer, to work on their overall health and well-being as well.
Thank you for the question, John, and thank you to all the candidates for their answers. Question 11 will be delivered by Linda, who is down the front row.
Good evening. My question is, what are your plans for investment in social care for adults and children with severe disabilities and their carers?
We'll start with Alexander on that one.
So we support a national care programme of reimbursing the stay-at-home carers, so say where you've got an elderly couple where one of them is supporting that family member instead of them receiving that support from an NHS or from a care institution. That's saving the state money, but like so many parents across the country, that work isn't recognised or recompensated. So we support accumulating a budget that those people can spend on their own end-of-life care. And I support greater investment in community mental health and physical health support care. Thank you.
Apologies on that one, I didn't start the timer in time and got carried away in my own mind. Okay, same question to Jacqueline, please.
Well, I'd like to say that successive governments have dodged the bullet on this one, working out a really effective care system. I also think that a lot of women and children are doing care responsibilities, and it's taken for granted. It's sort of seen really as goodwill. I think that caring is such an important job in our society, but it's a bit like nursery nursing. It's never recognised for what it's worth to society, and it's never been recompensed fully. And a lot of the jobs are non-unionised. A lot of the jobs rely on people tearing around. They're not paid for the transport, and the hours that they are paid don't reflect the effort and the dedication and care that goes into it. So I think we really need to look at the whole care system and make sure that it really is as good and as set up as our NHS.
And the same question to Danny.
This is something that I personally feel quite passionate about. My brother is on the autism spectrum and will never live independently. My father receives disability allowance and carers allowance for him. The government says, we will give you money to look after him, but we want practical help to get him out of the house, to get him socialising, to give him life skills, to give him better quality of life. The Green Party believes in respecting people, all of those, the most vulnerable in society, need our help the most. We need better provisions for social care for those with disabilities, both physical and mental. And as the population grows older, we need provisions in place to look after an ageing population so that we don't all have to work until we're 80.
Thank you for that, Danny. Gavin, you're next.
So as I touched upon, I've sort of seen firsthand about actually some of how the children in care actually works. And one of the key things that's missing is permanence for so many of those children. And how do you actually create a system to put more permanence there? And one of the key areas I think that does need expanding and needs changing quite radically is actually how we support more kinship caring. It's not the answer to everything, but it is an important part of it. But if I can just turn very briefly, it's hard to do so in sort of talk about this in 60-second bursts, but on adult social care, this isn't something that actually one single political party has the answer to. What we actually need to do is, as all political parties work together to find a solution on something that is generational, because we need to have a consensus that works across those generations.
And then for the final response on that, over to Sam.
This is quite close to my heart, but care is a national disgrace in this country, to be honest. It's ridiculous. My sister worked in care, and some of the jobs that she had to do for minimum wage were ridiculous. So first off, we want to increase a special minimum wage for carers, because there just are not enough people. We can't rely on the kindness of people to do that job. I disagree with you, Gavin. I think the Liberal Democrats absolutely have the plan. We want to introduce free personal care. We've got a raft of other things, such as giving carers, people who are unpaid carers, rights under the Equality Act, so they can get leave and sick pay, which isn't currently a thing, because we rely so much on unpaid carers to fill in the gaps where the state should. It's a disgrace, to be honest. And if you leave here with just one thought, watch Ed Davies' video where he talks about his son and caring for his son, and you can tell me that we don't have a plan.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Linda, for the question. Okay, question 12 is Rupert, which is just a couple of rows behind you there.
Thank you, panel. We live in a constituency, and you hope to represent a constituency of extreme poverty and extreme wealth. How would you help the poorest and most vulnerable in our community?
Thank you for the question. We're going to start with Gavin on that one.
Fundamentally, I would always be there to have an open door. I've worked across much of this constituency for 14 years. I've worked with local people, local groups, whether it is, and local authorities, regardless of what people's politics are, but try to get things done and try to make things happen in the places that I represent. There is no silver bullet, but what you do have, if you have a will and you have a passion, which is what I will bring, whichever part of the constituency it is, and whether it's here in Stowe, I will work with groups to try and make a real difference to people's lives in this constituency. I'll be there to help, to support, and to rally help to make things happen.
Thank you for that. Same question to Alexander.
As I've detailed already, I plan to build 100,000 more social housing, so people's rents, mortgage outpayments are lower. But I'd like to use the time on this question to echo and support what Sir Gavin Williamson said about parties collaborating to find common solutions to problems. So as a party, we're only contesting 122 seats in the country, so any elected members of Parliament from the Social Democratic Party will have to work with members of other parties. And tonight and on Monday evening, Hustings, I've been so impressed by the quality of the passion and detail of ideas presented by other candidates here. So while I don't have detailed answers to every single question and policy. I think that spirit of working together to serve the common good is so wonderful to see, and I hope that can propagate across Parliament at that level. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny, on to you.
You're right, this is an incredibly varied constituency, and I've actually been chatting with a number of people about how different all the parts of this constituency are, how much it's changed, and the only way that this constituency can be served is by a regular presence in the different parts, because Great Wyrley is so different to Penkridge, which is so different to Brood, which is so different to Stone, which is so different to Coven. Each area has its own needs, and it's going to need someone whose focus is local, who cares about helping people, who wants the local economy to grow, who wants to support local people, see local schools thriving. My home is in Staffordshire. My teenagers love Staffordshire. I'm not going anywhere.
Thank you, Danny. And same question over to Sam.
Thank you. I just want to hone in on the poverty aspect of your question, because I think it's really important. I was very lucky to grow up in a family where I was well supported and my parents had high-paying jobs and was able to help me go to university. But not all kids have that. And so one of our policies that I really get behind is ending that two-child benefit scrap. Tax on credits, I wish Labour would join us, and I wish Conservatives would roll back that on that. Liberal Democrats have always campaigned for free school meals. I think we've had it in our manifesto since 1906 or something like that, so we were a Liberal Party back then. So yeah, no, we do strongly stand on improving poverty and making people have the opportunity in life equal to others that maybe are in a slightly better situation. Thank you.
And then finally on that question, Jacqueline.
Well, thanks for that question. You're dead right. What a diverse and huge constituency, 15 wards, and what you experience in Featherstone and the ex-mining communities and what you experience maybe in Weston-under Lizard might be very different things. But I think we can sometimes get a false idea about looking. We might think that this is a very affluent constituency compared to, say, Stoke Central, where I used to live. But if you look at some of the issues of rural poverty, for example, and the way that transport systems and job opportunities and training opportunities are not available in rural areas, and people have challenges to travel to them, I think that the MP who represents you has got to be a very good listener. They've got to listen to the different needs you've got. They've got to be aware. They've got to be able to signpost you to the services you need, and they've got to be able to fight for you in Westminster.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you, Rupert, for your question. Question 13 is from Adrian, who is just a bit 2/3 of the way back there.
Thank you very much. Stone is home to excellent independent schools, and many children from Stone also attend independent schools nearby, such as Stafford Grammar or Newcastle-under-Lyme School or other independent specialist provision. What would you, as their MP, say to parents in Stone who are just about managing to afford it but can no longer afford to keep their child in that chosen school, to the children who will have to go through the trauma of leaving friends behind and go to a different school, maybe at a potentially crucial time, and to the teachers who potentially could be facing job losses due to Labour's manifesto pledge to tax education?
Okay. On that one, we're going to start with Alexander.
I'd like to thank Adrian for his question, and I'm sorry if I've jumped to the assumption, but to himself or any parents out there who are working extremely hard to fund their children's independent education and relieving that burden from the taxpayer, that's amazing, something really to be celebrated, not to be knocked down. I oppose the 20% taxation on tuition fees proposed by Labour. I think the practical consequence of that for the school to be able to pay staff the same fees and other outgoings would be to have to increase the tuition fees themselves by 25% to balance those books, which means lots of children, as Adrian's pointed out, wouldn't be able to attend those schools. What that would actually do is increase social division, because private education then becomes even more elite and narrow because less can afford it.
Thank you, Alexander. Same question over to Sam.
I think this is definitely directed at the Labour's manifesto pledge, so I'll answer that. I don't think you can solve the issues that we have in education by then taking services away. You're quite right. You know, we would see class sizes increase in state school educations as well, which has been reported. In terms of my opinion, that, you know, parents are absolutely to have their right if they want to send their kids. I went to a private school. Because I have dyslexia, and this private school that I went to supported me in order to be able to, I say combat, but get to learn my dyslexia and use it as an advantage. And so I really worry with the increase. You know, we lose those specialist schools, which are essential. But we need to be bringing state schools up to that level. And as I've spoken before, the Lib Dems have the policies to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. On to Gavin next for that one, please.
7% of pupils in England go to private schools. The largest provider of special needs education in England are private schools. Putting a 20% tax on that, on families, these aren't schools that are making millions of pounds. They're usually schools that are literally just getting by with very small surpluses or no surpluses every year. You're going to see so many pupils displaced out of private schools that the cost to the Exchequer is going to be enormous. And the children who are in special schools are going to be particularly impacted by this, because it will impact on their viability and their ability to provide services. It's a dreadful policy, and I seriously hope if there's a Labour government, they rapidly rethink it.
First of all,
Jacqueline's already worked out that she's the next person to answer the question. Now, can I just say before we go on, that the order of who's being asked to give answers has been preset before I'd even seen any of these questions. So this isn't staged in any way, okay?
Okay, let's begin. Thank you, Adrian, for the question. I'm glad to hear that he and the people that he's speaking for are ambitious for their children. I want to say to you, I'm ambitious for all our children. Private schools are thriving. 7% of all schools in Staffordshire are private schools. There's been a net increase in private schools, 12 extra last year. So they're not withering away on the vine in any sense. I also want to just put one thing straight. The Labour Party manifesto says that if a child has an ECH, that's the old Statement of Special Educational Needs, they will not apply tax. And finally, the tax does not have to be passed on to the parents in fees. That is a choice for the individual establishment.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And then Danny for the closing on that one.
I totally agree with Jackie that it is wonderful that parents have great ambitions for their children, and those that can afford to send them to private schools want them to have the best start in life. I agree with Jackie on that. And I genuinely do sympathise with anyone that faces losing their job, or children that face upheaval of having to move school, because, as I said, the Green Party, we care about people, we do. But our priority is improving state schools. We want to invest in education. We want to improve conditions in schools. We want to increase teacher wages so that everyone has access to a brilliant education in a state school. We want to invest in that.
Thank you, Adrian, for the question, and thanks for everybody's answers. Question 14 is Martin Farmer. He's just over.
So, as the last question was mostly aimed at the Labour candidate, this possibly is aimed more at the Conservative candidate. What thoughts do the candidates have on the last-minute withdrawal of the Reform candidate? Can anyone shed any light on the events leading to the withdrawal?
On that one, we'll start with Danny.
I'm not here to speculate on anyone's motives for anything, and I'm not here to speak ill of anyone. I don't know anything about what might have happened, and I'm afraid I'm not here to speculate. I do fully appreciate the question. I can understand why you've asked it, but I work on the principle, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything, so I will sit down now, and I apologise for not answering your question.
Thank you, Danny. Jacqueline?
I respect Danny's position on that, but unfortunately, politics isn't a tea party. It's often quite a ruthless business, and it involves a lot of people who would like power and influence. So, although I respect Danny's position, I will say that I think that people who wanted to vote for that particular party were left without a candidate with only 3/4 of an hour to go to the deadline. So the party couldn't put up another candidate. So I think it's very regrettable that that happened. There's been a lot of speculation about it. It obviously affected the polls because we were very close, the Conservative and Labour candidates. And with Reform polling up to 14% in this constituency, it was a dramatic development.
Alexander, please.
As I mentioned earlier, I raised a concern of a suspicion of a crime with Staffordshire Police, and we sent over the 2 officers and I spoke to a single point of contact. I'm going to ask a direct question to Sir Gavin Williamson. First, do you condemn Tom Welling's actions, and what will you do to stop this never happening again, should it have happened? So the 30 seconds left to Sir Gavin. You've got 30 seconds. Your silence speaks volumes. I think people here would like to hear your response.
It's not his time to speak. It's your time to speak, and tell these people your opinion.
My opinion is it's disgraceful that there's no Reform candidate on the ballot. My invitation to the Hustings is open as a guest, and the count is open to Reform, and I think it was a grave mistake that showed lack of judgment I wouldn't expect from a cabinet minister for Sir Gavin to have met Reform under those circumstances.
An answer from Sam, please.
I'm excited for my directed question. I'm sure you've put loads in. The clue's in the name, Liberal Democrats, we believe in democracy. I don't believe really much in what Reform says, but I do believe in their proportional representation and their political reform. I think what the Reform candidate did was really unfortunate, and it's terrible that people don't have a choice to vote. The system's rigged as it is, and it's been made even harder for the people of Stone. So, I condemn the actions of the Reform candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And Gavin?
Thank you, Martin, for your question. So, it's very easy to sort of use innuendo to try and imply that people have been involved. I actually had the privilege of meeting Jacqueline before she submitted her nominations, and Sam before they submitted their nominations. Is the next accusation that I sort of had any form of involvement on that. I had no involvement on this. That you had a candidate that decided to withdraw, no involvement from myself, and the idea that people actually can sort of insinuate and sort of imply, I think is not really where we should be having a sort of an open discourse and debate.
Thank you, Martin, for your question. Again, thank you for all the candidates' responses. 2 more questions to go. Question 15 is from Verity, who is down there.
As an 18-year-old first-time voter, why is it in my interest to vote for you, and what are you actually going to do for young people of my age in our community?
On that one, we're starting with Sam.
Well, if you'd had a Liberal Democrat government, you wouldn't be a first-time voter now, you'd be a first-time voter at 16. I believe, if you're paying tax, you absolutely have a right to say where that tax is spent, to be honest, or don't tax people under 16 and 17. In terms of what the Liberal Democrats can do, we pledge to build 150,000 new homes each year. The housing crisis is insane for young people. If you think it impacts you as an older person, for younger people, it's impossible unless you have parent support to get onto the housing market. We need to solve it, not only for our young people to give them a future, but also for our economy. You've got young people spending 50% of their wages on rent, and it's just going into the pockets of landlords who aren't spending it in the community. So we need to solve the housing crisis. As I mentioned before, we need to build the houses in the right place and not just give all the money to developers. But yeah, I think that would be one of the core reasons why you should be voting Liberal Democrat as a young person. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Jacqueline?
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think that politicians have tended to focus on older people because they're reliable voters. In our manifesto, we would expand the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, something that I've felt strongly about for a long time as a teacher. If we get people voting at 16, then we're going to get them geared up to be thinking and making those choices. At the moment, we've got those 2 years where they often don't get enough information about the political process, and therefore it's difficult for them to make informed decisions. We're going to do a lot for young people in terms of a more modern curriculum so that young people can be ready for work and life with more emphasis on creativity. I agree with what the Liberal Democrat candidate said about housing, because young people are really affected by the housing crisis. We want more high quality apprenticeships and specialist technical colleges, and we are a party that's thinking about the future and our young people.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Alexander?
I don't support lowering the voting age to 16 or 17 because I want to protect those young people from the pressure of that, on top of the pressures they're already facing with exams and high levels of mental health problems. But there's lots of policies we propose, if you look for our manifesto, that will be of huge benefit to children starting their lives. So we're proposing to lower tuition fee cap to $7,000 and free tuition for areas of national importance, such as medicine, and a generous reimbursement for apprenticeship schemes further to what's already has been rolled out. So you have a much greater opportunity to get your foot in the door and start a rewarding career, rather than the classic paradox of needing experience to get experiencing that's holding so many people back. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Danny?
We're passionate about investing in youth, in young people. We want to invest in training to give you better opportunities for work. We want to help you when you're looking for work. We want to give more rights to those on 0-hour contracts. We also want to help you when you're looking to move out of home into your first home. We want more rights for renters, and we want more affordable housing. We want to end the right to buy schemes, that social housing stays social housing for those that need it, and we want to build affordable homes, the right house, the right place, the right price. And of course, the reason I originally joined the Green Party myself, we want to care for the planet so that when you grow up and your children grow up, you'll be able to breathe fresh air, and global warming will hopefully be reducing to a safe level.
Thank you, Danny. And then finally over to Gavin.
So the comprehensive school that I went to and worked my way through was, you saw so many young people then. Didn't all just go off to university. So many went off into manufacturing, some joined our armed forces, but only about 15-20% went off to university. Now that number has grown, it's about roughly 50-50 nowadays. But we don't talk enough about the 50% of young people who don't go to university. We don't talk enough about actually what are the true opportunities and the variety of opportunities that there are. And there has been an inequality in terms of funding between that 50% who go to university and that 50% that don't. I'm incredibly proud in terms of actually bringing forward the skills bill, but we need to be doing more for skills, more for apprenticeships, more for giving young people a whole variety of options, and that's the best thing I think we can deliver so many young people.
Thank you, Verity, for the question. Again, thanks everybody for your answers. And our final question comes from Jack, who is just over there.
Good evening, panellists. A two-part question for you. The first one is a yes or no, and that's all the answer that's needed. Do you agree with the decision to stop HS2? And the second part, how will you now secure Stone's connectivity to Manchester, Birmingham and London?
Thanks for the question, Jack. Gavin, we're going to start with you.
So first part of the question, yes, absolutely. And I fought hard to make sure that the government took that decision, because what it was going to do, it was going to rip through the countryside right around here. It had caused traffic chaos for the whole of Stone, gridlocking it for absolutely, not just months, but years. And what we need to do is see better train services out of Stone Station. I've already met with ministers about the need to have better direct services, about talking about how we get the Stone to Birmingham back, how we get Stone to Manchester, but also, I remember a time when Stone had intercity services stopping there. How do we back those bits to make sure that we get a longer station platform and better disabled access? I will be working with the town council, the borough council, the county council, across the community to deliver these things for Stone.
Same question to Sam.
It's interesting disagreeing with something that, it was a government plan at the time. So, no, I don't agree, personally. Liberal Democrats, on the other hand, we would look at a commission to review the decision. Seems a bit of a waste that we've put so much money. I think the problem with the HS2 is the people delivering it, we've wasted a ton of money on it. We've got some of the worst trains in Europe, and it's an embarrassment. We've got the worst trains in Europe. We've got the highest fare prices. So what will the Liberal Democrats do? We want to put a freeze on fares. We want to introduce an authority to review fares and to hold operators accountable. And then let's talk about buses. We want to increase more rural areas across the constituency don't have a bus service anymore. We want to give local authorities more funding so they can put on their own bus routes in line with what the actual communities need. I could talk for ages about public transport, to be honest, but I'm over, aren't I, John? Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Danny, over to you.
Thank you. My yes or no answer is also yes, would scrap it. Investing in transport, again, I've said before, we are passionate about investing in public transport because it's better for the environment. We actually want to invest 19 billion over 5 years to improve public transport, which includes supporting electrification, better for the environment. And we also want to give local authorities more control over how their funds are spent to improve local bus services. On a national level, yes, we want better train links and we want affordable train travel. It's ridiculous at the moment that it's often cheaper to drive somewhere than to take the train. Let's get the cars off the roads and let's get affordable train travel with a good, regular service.
Thank you, Daniel. Jacqueline?
There's a pattern here. The answer is yes. HS2 became a white elephant. The original idea was to get freight off the roads, which is a good intention, and also to cut journey times down for commuters. Then we had COVID, which made it an irrelevance because people could meet very easily virtually, so they didn't need to physically be in different places. But look at the cost. Look at the cost to the environment. Look at the cost in people's lives that have property, compulsory purchased, etc. The trees that have been felled. I worked in Birmingham at the time, and I remember the disruption at Curzon Street, and now it doesn't even link together. I think it reminds me a bit of the Rwanda white elephant too. You know, money that's been spent on these projects, you know, with no outcome. So yeah, I would definitely say that the right decision was made in the end.
And then final answer to the final question, Alexander.
So quick note on the white elephant of Rwanda. I think the mistake of that was us not leaving the ECHR. We can't stop mass migration without doing that, as Suella warned Rishi at the time. On the transport topic, we need to nationalise the rail services. I agree with Danny on the extortionate, disgusting prices, but it's sometimes cheaper even to fly somewhere to go abroad and come back than it is to get a train. It's leaving communities separated, it's destructive to people's lives, but it's also destructive on an economic level. But it's reducing the opportunities of people to seek employment, to grow the economy by taking jobs they commute to easily. So we shouldn't be looking at that cost just in terms of the profit revenue of the ticket sales, but on the effect of the wider economy and reduction in cost on public services. Thanks.
Thanks, Alexander, and thanks, Jack, for your question. That's the end of our 16 questions for tonight. We're now going to have closing statements by each of the candidates. They've got 2 minutes to tell you why you should vote for them in the general election on the 4th of July. We're going to start with Danny.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for listening to all of us and for coming up with extra questions. It is honestly wonderful to see people taking an interest in what is happening in this country. This election is so important. We desperately need change. The Green Party wants to invest in the young, from children, preschool and at school, to youths, young people. We want to invest in green energy. We want to help the environment and we want to bring energy costs down. We want to invest in education and training for all. We want clean rivers. We want to end sewage in the rivers. We want better public services. Everything is costed in our manifesto and it's realistic and we are honest about how it's being funded. You can see it in our manifesto. This constituency, this totally new constituency, has such varied needs all the way across it. And you need someone that will listen to everyone. Now, no one could ever say that they will be able to say yes to everything they are ever asked to do. It's just not possible. but the people of this new constituency need someone that will listen and that will do everything they can to help them. A vote for Green is a vote for hope for the future.
Thank you, Danny. Jacqueline?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like you to see this election as an historic one and a huge opportunity for change. But I'd like to see you using your vote very wisely. If you think about who do you want to represent you, it's a bit like a job interview. You want somebody that's got an outstanding record of public service. You want somebody that is going to be principled, that's going to make pledges in terms of the Nolan principles. We've had a long, long time of Conservative MPs in this constituency, and there's always been a slight feeling of entitlement and complacency about that whatever happened, we would return a Tory MP. We have got the opportunity to change, but although I've got the utmost respect for the candidates here tonight, there is only one real choice if you do want to end this period of Conservative dominance. You can be part of history here. You can make the choice and vote in a new government when the old guard are stepping down. A record number of MPs will not be contesting their seat this time, so the Partygate fraternity will be leaving, and it will be chance for a new start. I would urge you to vote Labour.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And on to Alexander.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending and submitting such a fascinating range of questions. I'm proud to have represented the Social Democratic Party's perspectives on this, and I hope we're able to provide a viable alternative to the Tory-Labour duopoly we've seen before. Now, the question I asked at the last Hustings, this has received 200,000 views and I've had 4,500 likes in support, and I would like to repeat that to give the candidates here the same opportunities to respond to that. And that comes as a result from many women who are concerned about the protection of single-sex spaces, of crisis centres, of hospital wards, of prison accommodation. And the question I have, and this could just be a hand gesture, if you agree with a statement, if you think it's true, to each of the candidates, the minute we've got left, is it true that a man is an adult human male and a woman is an adult human female? True or false?
The candidates don't obviously have to answer that.
You don't have to, but you can raise your hand if you think it's true. Now is your chance.
Again, as I
Thank you, Sam.
Rude, yeah. It's a distraction. This is distraction politics. There are so many more important things that need to be on the agenda tonight. The NHS is crumbling, the economy is stagnating. What is in people's pants doesn't matter, in my opinion. It's a shame.
Sam, I said before, I want to trust you all. I wish the best for you all, but I find it very difficult to trust any politician when they can't give a clear answer to such a simple dictionary definition. Yes, Danny.
So I just wanted to briefly say in response to your question that it's too wide an issue to be able to give a one-word answer to. All I would say is that I have used public toilets with pre- and post-op trans people and felt very safe in their presence. That's all I'm going to say on that subject. But it's
I've run out of time, but I thank you for giving an answer.
Your time's up. Time's up. Okay. On to Gavin.
So just in response to that, I do agree that a man's a man and a woman's a woman, and I think it's important to have, it is important to protect single-sex spaces. But I feel greatly honoured to be able to be the candidate for this new constituency. What I can promise you is that I will always be there to fight beside you. Whether it's issues to do with getting the best bus services, the best train services, whether it's about regenerating our high street, whether it is about trumpeting what Stone needs, whether it is in Parliament, whether it is in Staffordshire, wherever it is. But people to understand that they have a champion and they have someone that will work across party, across the community to make a difference. That is what I will do if elected as Member of Parliament on the 4th of July. I will be here, I will be part of the community, I'll be involved in the community, I'll be listening to people's issues, and if I can help them, I will help them. I have always been of a view it is vital to fight, not just for your views and your ideas, but for the communities that you're part of. This is, as I said, where my family are, and it is incredibly important to me. But I won't just be fighting for my family, I'll be fighting for every one of our families. And as your Member of Parliament, if I am given that privilege, you will see me, I will be present, but most importantly, I will make a difference for you.
Thank you, Gavin, and then Sam.
Thank you. I'll keep this short and sweet, like me. I've been promised a pint with the candidates after. So I came today to hopefully talk a lot of policy and really inspire you with the Liberal Democrat policy. So I won't go into our policy details because I'm sure you all know them and I'm sure you've all read our manifesto. What I will say is I came also to show you that I am a passionate individual. I'm going to work really, really, really hard for you. Not only because I have to as a Liberal Democrat, but actually because I want to. I want to make the world a better place for my newborn daughter, and it's as simple as that. And so I really hope that you can lend me your vote this time round. Thank you.
Well, that's the end of the hustings. I'd like to thank all the candidates for their attendance tonight and for answering all those questions. I'd like to thank everybody who's come along in the room, people who are watching online, and for all the questions that were submitted. Big shout out to Dave, who's done the audio, DB Audio. He's got a banner behind. Anybody needs some. And Paul and his kids and his team who've really helped out with the video, because obviously I'm normally the guy doing the Facebook stuff and I'm stood up front with a microphone. So thank you all for coming.
Could I just ask everyone to give a big thank you to John for organising this?
Thank you again. Yeah, I'm not sure if is the bar still open or is the bar closed now? The bar's open, so if anybody would like a drink, socialise, I'll be hanging around a bit. I'm sure some of the candidates might be mooching around for a little while.